and wholeness, healing of the heart. Assalamu alaikum, and Ramadan Mubarak, Ramazan Mubarak, Ramzan Mubarak, and all the various permutations of these greetings. Um, Ramadan Saeed, and yeah, may the blessed and holy month have been joyful for you, inshallah. And may it be a means of drawing closer and closer, inshallah, to God. So we have these monthly gatherings on a Saturday every month, and they are a means of offering us what many of us are missing in our day-to-day lives, in our local communities, which is precisely that sense of community. And so these sessions, we've been holding them for a few years, and we call them, rather in a transparent way, chai, love, and prayer. Um, Chai, love, and prayer. And so we come 11 months out of the year with everybody's favorite cup of chai. Can be coffee, it can be water, it can be your favorite halal beverage of choice. There's always love, inshallah, because this whole world is nothing other than a manifestation of love. And then may it be, inshallah, a form of prayer as well. Well, this month is the one month in which my cup of chai is rather chailess. Because with it being the holy and blessed month of Ramadan, there is a different rhythm, a different routine. And that's precisely the point that we are going to be exploring in this hour or so that we have together. There are a lot of preparations and logistics that so many of you, so many of us have been exploring in this month. And sometimes we even get to hear a few niceties about this is the month in which the devils are locked up and the gates of heaven are particularly open. I don't know if you're reading the same kind of news that I'm reading, but the devils don't quite seem to be locked up these days. They seem to be having a field day. Both the devils, as the Habib alayhi salatu wasalam says, the devils that flow inside the veins of humanity, each one of our own inner demons, and also the devils at large, in particular the two-legged varieties. We see so much pain and suffering and agony in so many parts of the world. And so we want to make sure that this month is a time of rejuvenation. It's a time of coming closer and closer to Allah, a time for spiritual discipline. And so my hope is that the hour that we have together will take you beyond many of the conventional stories and anecdotes, and we get to hear from our great sages. We get to hear from the Qur'an. We get to hear from the chosen one, alayhi salatu wassalam. And we get to see what is it that Rumi has to teach us about fasting. What does Ibn Arabi say about Ramadan? What do some of the great sages like Hujwiri and Junaid and Imam Qushayri have to share with us? But as we do in every single month, we begin with music. Because music is something that is a sustenance for our hearts. Music, as we always say in every session, is not plucking away at a string, and it is not banging on a drum. Music is something celestial. It's something that you feel in your heart. And when it's real, it draws you closer and closer to God. And every session we have started with playing the same music. It's the music by the great, wonderful group Pearls of Islam. We were so fortunate this last December that they accompanied us on our Umrah journey to Mecca and Medina. And I've loved them and their music for years. And now whenever I hear it, I can close my eyes and I can see them in Mecca and I can see them in Medina singing their beautiful dhikr and their nasheeds to praise God and the Prophet. So we will begin, with your permission, with Ya Rabbi bil Mustafa. O our cherishing, sustaining Lord, draw us closer to you through the chosen one, Mustafa. And this is, of course, one of the great honorifics and titles of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And since this month also is the month in which the month of Ramadan overlaps perfectly with the holy season of Lent for our Christian friends, it's good to remember that the very same description, the very same word and verb that the Qur'an uses for the Prophet Muhammad, this title of Mustafa, is also used for the Virgin Mary. In the Qur'an, Allah says to Mary that she has been chosen and purified. Istifaki. Istifaki is the verbal form of the honorific Mustafa. So let that be a way of honoring Ramadan and Lent. And with your permission, we will now begin with the Pearls of Islam. Bismillah.
بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم يا ربي بالمصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم. Bless him like you bless the stars. Bless him by the beating hearts. Bless him by the number of trees that rustle so sweetly in the breeze. Bless him by the eyes that see. Bless him by the tongues that speak. Bless him by the souls that seek. Bless him for eternity. Ya Rabbi bil Mustafa بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم. And if I could count all the raindrops in the sea, Ya Allah, please bless him by that number eternally. By every grain of sand that covers every inch of land, Ya Allah, please bless him eternally. النبي المصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Can you hear them singing his name? And can you hear them singing his praise? And all of the angels are singing his name. And all of the angels are singing his praise. Ya Mustafa, Ya Habib Allah, Ya Mustafa, Ya Habib Allah.
MashaAllah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Yes, yes, indeed, indeed. There's a reason why historically almost all of the gathering of the Sufis have began with music. There's something that music can convey that mere words cannot. Music can get right to the heart of things. So friends, we want to use the time that we have today to talk about the heart of Ramadan, the inner mysteries of Ramadan. And Ramadan as a word is used only one time in the Qur'an. That's interesting, isn't it? So fasting is such a prominent ritual for us. It's one of the pillars of faith. And surely the Quran describes fasting often. We hear passages in the Quran such as يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O you who have faith, indeed Siyam, fasting, has been prescribed upon you as it was prescribed for those who came before you. Indeed, we see that almost every religious tradition has a concept of fasting. We already talked about Lent. We already know about the fasting legacy in the Jewish tradition. But almost all religious traditions have a concept of withholding from food and then coming back to it. There's something about establishing an intentional rhythm of eating and not eating. Of course, in the pre-modern world, this was an even more important example, ritual, than it is for us modern beings. Many of us munch. We're snackers. If you're sitting there, it's not that hard to have a bowl of something that you just munch on. You might walk over to the pantry or the refrigerator and grab something. But pre-modern people used to eat in intervals. It's only us modern people for whom the idea of intermittent fasting has become a kind of rage. And now we need to have doctors telling us about the medical benefits of intermittent fasting. Traditionally speaking, almost all people were doing a kind of intermittent fasting because when you would have an early dinner, you probably would not eat anything again until you would break the fast. Thus the term breakfast. It's when you're breaking the fast. So the Quran does talk about fasting and that it is something that has been prescribed on communities even before the time of the chosen one. And the goal of fasting is not identified as anything other than awe. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. It's so that you can increase in taqwa. And taqwa is one of those beautiful Quranic concepts that sometimes the Quranic translators, into English at least, they take all the joy out of it. You see it translated as piety, scrupulousness. None of these really get at it. Taqwa is best translated by the concept of awe. It is to stand in sheer awe, amazement before God. It's to develop a kind of consciousness where everywhere that you turn, there is the face of God. And taqwa is not simply and purely a mental construct, but it has an element of utilizing the body. There's an early Quran commentator, Ibn Abbas, who describes taqwa, this goal of fasting, as to walk barefoot on a stony road. You step on a little stone that is sharp. Some of you know that, alhamdulillah, my wife and I have children, including toddlers. I don't have so much the experience of walking on stony roads, but I do have the experience of walking on Legos. And it hurts. It jolts you into a kind of awareness. Um, your feet, the minute that they land on a toy that you're not expecting, all of a sudden it gets your attention. You stand in awe of, in this moment, all of a sudden you become present. And so the goal of fasting is to bring you back to your body, to bring you back to the senses, to bring you back to the heart, and to stand in awe of that particular moment. That part is talked about in the Quran. But what is even more interesting, what is even more fabulous, is the reality that the word Ramadan, the name of this holy month, is mentioned once and only once in the Quran. Again, this crucial ritual, this way of breaking up the rut and the monotony of our existence. That's the reason that genuine spirituality, genuine mysticism, is not simply about what you could call mindfulness. It's not simply about a way of reorganizing the inner furniture of your mind. Genuine mysticism also has a ritual component. Your body becomes involved. Your limbs, your hands, your legs, your back, your stomach, your eyes, your tongue, your ears, your breathing. Rituals of meditation also create a sense of community. Pulls you together into communion with others And sometimes that community is even with humans. Sometimes it's with birds. Sometimes it's with trees and the grass and rivers. And Ramadan is the occasion whereby we become most attuned to the body as a co-participant in our spiritual journey. We pay quite a lot of attention to eating and not eating, drinking and not drinking, in the daytime, abstaining from sexual relations. Not because food is evil, certainly not because water is evil. And remember that in this tradition, sexual relations are seen as a way of drawing closer in love to your partner and to God. But sometimes we have to rebalance things. There's a difference between eating, being grateful to the earth, being grateful to the farmers who have prepared the food, being grateful to the ones who have cooked the food on one hand, and gluttony on the other. There's a difference between making love to your husband, to your wife, as a model of experiencing divine love on earth, and a kind of lust that scatters and dissipates that energy. What Ramadan offers us is an opportunity to have a pause between the stimulus and the response that we have to it. It creates a gap. Rather than mindlessly eating and consuming and drinking, it uses patience and gratitude as a way of bringing that sense of intentionality to the everyday rituals that we do. The prayers break up the monotony of our day. The monotony of the week is broken up by the Friday prayers. The monotony of the months is broken up by Ramadan. And the monotony of a lifetime is broken up by pilgrimage. There is this constant striving towards keeping things fresh. If you've seen the movie Groundhog Day, right? A guy who wakes up and is just living the same day over and over again every day. And it's finally when he falls in love that he gets to experience things with a sense of freshness. That's what rituals do. You get to stand in that radical amazement, all before God. So how does the Quran come to use Ramadan? This one time. We get this in the second chapter of the Quran. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى. The month of Ramadan is that in which the Quran is sent down as a guidance for humanity with a clarity, with clear insights, and a means of discernment. We know that part, and we know that it goes on to say that it's also intended to be a month of ease, that if you are sick, if you're traveling, also if you're pregnant or nursing, then God desires ease for you and not hardship. That part we have paid attention to. You hear that ayah in many talks about Ramadan and in many sermons. Much less commonly, though, do people go on to mention the verse that comes immediately after. This surely is not accidental. It's providential. And what is the very next verse of the Quran that comes after the only time that Ramadan is named in the Quran? It's one of the most intimate verses of the Quran. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. When my devotees, when my servants, this is God speaking, when my devotees ask you about me, I am near. I hear and I respond to all of those who call upon me. So let them also heed my call. Let them have faith in me so that they may be guided. You know that in the Quran, we hear the voice of Allah coming from every direction. Whichsoever way you turn, there is the face of Allah. Sometimes God is spoken of in the third person. God is the light of the heavens and the earth. Sometimes God is spoken of in the second person. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Oh God, it's only you whom we adore, only you whom we worship, only of you that we ask for help. Sometimes we hear God who is speaking in that royal, majestic first person plural, the we. We have created. This is the awesome, majestic aspect of God. And then there are few verses in the Quran in which God speaks of in the me voice, the I voice. And these are without exception those most tender and intimate passages. And perhaps the most tender of them comes in association with Ramadan. When my devotees ask you about me, tell them, I am near. I am near. فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. قَرِيب, near. I am the near one. You know that many of these divine names, their numbers is much, much more than simply 100. They occur in pairs. God is the Al-Awwal wal-Akhir, the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. God is the Muhyi and Mumit. God is the one that gives you life and the one that returns life to its source. God is the Zahir and the Batin, the manifest and the hidden inward. But the name of Allah that we encounter here in the context of Ramadan is not in a pair. When my devotees ask you about me, tell them that I am near without there being a far. God is intimate and close at hand without the possibility of distance. So Ramadan has an intrinsic and organic connection with that experience of closeness to God. That's the reason that some of the Sufis, like Imam Junaid, says at one point that we learned Sufism not through words, but rather through hunger. That hunger is a divine language. Hunger can teach you things that sheer stories cannot. And when the chosen one, alayhi salatu wassalam, is describing this inner mystery of the fast, he narrates a conversation that he has with Allah. And when God is revealing to the Prophet the heart of Ramadan, the mystery of the fast, he says the following: كل عمل ابن آدم له. Every action of the children of humanity is for their own sake. When you pray, it's not because God needs it, that's for you. When you feed the poor, that's not to please God, but it's for your own benefit. When you go on pilgrimage, it's medicine for you. كل عمل ابن آدم له. Every action of humanity is theirs. إلا الصوم. Except for the fast. فإنه لي. The fast is mine. The fast is mine, and I myself reward it. I am the reward of the fast. Wow, that's an intense statement from the Blessed Prophet. The fast is God's. In a way that the prayer and pilgrimage and even the declaration of faith are not. So why is that? And how is that? These are the heart secrets that we want to be getting to. These are the reasons that the fast is called half of the spiritual path. Well, one reason for it is when you see somebody who's praying, you see them doing something. You can see them standing up, you can see them bowing down, and you can see them prostrating themselves before Allah. When you see somebody in pilgrimage in Mecca, you can see them going around in a counterclockwise fashion around the house of Allah until they come to discover their own inner Kaaba. They're doing something. Whereas the fast is different. And in the fast, what is noticed is the not doing. It's a chance to ponder our nothingness and the divine everythingness. It's an opportunity to empty our bellies as a symbol of emptying out our ego. The great Sufi Abul Hasan Kharaqani, a simple shepherd, right? He was not a metaphysician. He was not a philosophe. He was not a philosopher. He was entirely unlearned in a formal way, but maybe as great of a mystic as we have had. And in his very simple language, he says, give to God your nothingness, and God will give you his everythingness. Give to God your nothingness, and God will give you his everythingness. How is the fast divine? How is the fast something that is God's, apostrophe S? What is it that you can bring to God? What is it that you can bring to the divine presence, which is not already there in abundance? You want to bring goodness? Allah is the source of all the goodness. You want to bring your beauty? Inna Allaha jameel wa yuhibbul jamal. God is indeed beautiful, and God loves beauty. Indeed, you see this in all religious traditions. You think you're going to bring your extraordinary acts of worship and piety. If you've read the Hebrew Bible, at one point God cries out, I detest your rituals and your burnt offerings. I don't need your fancy rituals. So what is it that we can bring to God? What is it that, if you want to use that language, is missing from this divine gathering? God has no need of anything. God has no need of anything. God has no need. That's the one thing that's missing from the divine feast. Need, emptiness, brokenness, nothingness, weakness, thirst, hunger. So bring that. Come to God with all of your need. Come to God with all of your brokenness. Come to God with all of your emptiness. Come to God with all of your nothingness. That's the only thing that the Beloved asks of us. The great poet Fariduddin Attar, who was so influential on Maulana Rumi, he says at one point, if you have nothing to bring to this exalted court of God, fear not. God does not buy every pious act of self-denial. If you have nothing, bring that nothing. God will buy nothingness from you. God will buy nothingness from you. There's a beauty in this emptiness. There's a beauty in our weakness. Ya Allah, we've only skipped lunch today. And we are weak. We're hungry. We're thirsty. We turn to you. We look to you for support. We crawl to you. Our dependence on you is our poverty, is our faqr. We are the poor ones, and you are the rich. And as Ibn Arabi says, our greatest poverty is the fact that even our very existence is a loan from God. We have borrowed our very wujud, our very being, our very existence. So the fast assumes this beautiful way of drawing closer and closer to God, recognizing our dependence, and also being connected with others. With others. Some of the great Sufis say, if all that you have done is to eat before dawn and to eat after sunset, you're playing a game with yourself. One of them actually calls it child's play. These are games for children. What is it that we're called to do? draw closer to God, and also recognize that there are so many for whom the not eating and the not drinking is simply a daily reality. There's a hadith Qudsi that Ibn Arabi quotes. We find almost verbatim accounts in the Gospels where God says to humanity, I was hungry and you fed me not. And people say, you are the Lord of the worlds. How could we feed you? And God responds, if you had gone to the hungry, you would have found me with them. I was thirsty and you gave me nothing to drink. My Lord, you created water, oceans and rivers and the rain, the springs that bubble up from under our feet. How could we give you something to drink? If you had gone to the thirsty, you would have found me with them. If you had gone to the homeless, if you had gone to the refugee, if you had gone to those living under occupation and being bombed into oblivion, you would have found me with them. You could even call this a theology of divine withness, God's togetherness with the poor and the hungry, the orphan, the widow, the marginalized. That's the reason why Maulana Rumi says, when he is discussing fasting, he says, the most excellent of deeds is to make a full person's stomach hungry and to satisfy the stomach of someone who is hungry. To make the full stomach of yours hungry and to satisfy the hungry stomachs. When you study the life of the chosen one, alayhi salatu wassalam, hunger was not simply a spiritual practice for them. They knew hunger. They lived with hunger. At one point, when they were under sanctions and embargo, we see this condition today in Gaza. We see it in the Sudan and Congo, in so many places. And may God also have mercy on the people of my own ancestral homeland of Iran from the devils that are not locked up in this holy month. When the Prophet and his community were driven out of Mecca and they were seeking shelter in a valley, there was so little food for them to eat. And whatever little they had, they would share. And at one point, because people didn't want to eat more than what there was, they would tie stones to their stomach to create that illusion of being full. And people went to the Prophet to check to see if he was also doing the same thing. And he smiled and lifted up his tunic, and he had 2 stones tied to his own stomach. Hunger is something that is experienced by the Prophet and by those who love the Prophet. It's such an obvious point, but perhaps it needs to be said. God is talking with the poor, with the hungry, with the thirsty. God is not talking about the hungry, about the poor. And Ramadan becomes an opportunity to experience that. For Sufis like Rumi, they understood that the very form of Ramadan was sacred. So one of his teachers, Burhanuddin Muhaqqiq, Burhanuddin was Rumi's teacher before Shams. Burhanuddin taught his students the following truth. This is what Rumi himself was raised with. He says, if you are not able to do anything else, if you're not able to observe any other ritual, any other dhikr, any other act of worship, he repeats this twice. By God, do not neglect fasting. By God, do not neglect fasting. Because there's no mystical practice better than fasting. It says, when you hollow out the stomach, then springs of wisdom will burst forth through your heart. And the analogy that Maulana Rumi uses to talk about this, not surprisingly, is a musical one. So you know this, of course, because the Masnavi, Rumi's masterpiece, starts out with the story of the reed, the ney. It's a flute. It's a wooden flute that's something like a bamboo. The reed is cut from the bed of reeds. And if you take it and you try to play it, it will sound like this. It will not generate sound because it's still stuffed. So what do you have to do in order to be able to play music, to create beauty? You have to hollow it out. And Rumi says, we're also like this. As long as we're overstuffed, then the breath, the spirit cannot flow through you. At a very mundane level, some of us who are teachers, we know this. It's really hard to teach students after lunch. They're just sleepy. They want to take a nap. We might be sleepy. We would sleep through our own class. But if your stomach is light, then you can be filled with light. The heart can be filled with light. The eyes can be filled with light. The ears can be filled with light. The tongue can be filled with light. Many of the classical Sufis observed fasting, and they fasted not just in the month of Ramadan. They fasted around the year. And so a sweet topic of discussion was, how often should one fast? When should one fast? The Prophet himself, alayhi salatu wassalam, says the best way of fasting is what Dawood, alayhi salam, did, David. And so there's a fast of David, which is you fast every other day. You don't fast every single day because that can actually become just your lifestyle. But fasting every other day, fasting every few days, that can continue to jolt your system. That can be like stepping on Legos for your heart. That's the example of the fast of David. If you are from Pakistan, and you hail from that magnificent city of Lahore, you know that in many ways, if you want to use that term, the patron saint of Lahore is Data Ganj Bakhsh. His shrine is one of the most beloved of all the shrines in South Asia. This was a Persian Sufi by the name of Hujviri who wrote the magnificent book Kashful Mahjub, unveiling the veiled beloved. It has nothing to do with hijab. It's to remove from your eyes and from your heart what is veiling you from Allah as the beloved. And in this book, it's one of the first Persian books on Sufism that we have, written about 1,000 years ago. Hujviri says something really beautiful. He says, there were some who would fast every day, and there were some who only fasted in the month of Ramadan. And the ones who would fast every day, they have to ask themselves, are they doing it to get closer to God, or are they doing it because they want a reward? Are you in it for God, or are you in it for the garden of God? I ask my students sometimes, if you knew that you were going to get an A+ in the class, how many of you would show up? How many of you would read a book? So Hujviri says the higher level is when you fast, whenever it is that you're called to. And then if someone, not knowing that you were fasting, invited you to eat with them, to break bread with them, you would sit down and you would eat. And you wouldn't even reveal to them, oh, I can't because I'm fasting today. Because to disappoint them, to break their heart, is a greater sin than simply observing a voluntary fast is a merit. And Hujviri says this is actually the prophetic example. He tells the story that the Habib alayhi salatu wasalam was visiting his wife, and they knew his favorite meals, and one of them was a very simple dish of mashed dates and butter that they would make into a kind of paste, and they would have it with naan, with bread. It was one of his favorite dishes. And so he comes in, and they bring out this mashed plate of dates and butter, and he was fasting. And he says to them, I had intended to fast today, but let's eat together and I will fast another day. To be at ease with God and to put other people at ease. Imam Ghazali, we'll start to wrap up in a few minutes here. Imam Ghazali says at one point that there are 3 levels of fasting. They're almost expanding and expanding. He says, the first fast is a fast which is mostly using the throat. That's the fast that we're talking about, where you keep food and drink from going down your throat during the daytime. He says that's important, and that's the base level. He says you grow a little bit more on the journey, and instead of only your throat and your stomach being involved in the fast, all of your organs, all of your limbs, all of your body becomes involved. What if the body is not the obstacle to your spiritual life, but it's actually a fellow traveler. Yes, you keep your stomach away from food and drink and you share that food with others. What would the fast of the eyes look like? And I'm not merely talking about not having lustful glances, right? That should be the bare minimum. How often do we give an angry look to someone who lives in the same household with us? How often do we roll our eyes at someone? Is there a better way? Is there a fast where the glance can be a love glance? Can we train the eyes? Can we train the ear? I will not sully my ear by listening to gossip and to nonsense. Can I live with the recognition that the eyes and the ears are actually divine faculties? God is the Basir, the all-seeing, and the Sami, the all-hearing. Can I observe a fast of the tongue where my mouth will speak the truth, it will speak what's necessary, and it will speak what is kind, but it will refrain from speaking vanity, drawing attention to itself, or foul words? So Ghazali says this is the second layer of the fast where every bodily limb participates in it. And the third and the highest level of the fast is the fast of the heart. The heart. Where rather than keeping food and drink from going down your throat or monitoring your eyes and your ear and your tongue, you make sure that nothing other than Allah is entering your heart. And he says, in that station, even thinking about when is it time to break the fast is breaking the fast of the heart. Only Allah. Only Allah. Now, some of you friends, perhaps, are in a state of life where you are unable to fast. I am myself a diabetic. I grew up fasting, and some years ago, I tried to fast and I fainted. And the next year, I tried to fast and I fainted again. So what do we do? For those of us who are sick, who are diabetic, who are too young, who are too old, how do we participate in this holy and sacred month if one door of this palace of many mansions is closed to us? Well, if the fast of David is not an option, the Qur'an speaks about the fast of Maryam, Mary's fast. The Blessed Mother of Jesus, whom is described with the same honorific as the Chosen One. What do we learn about her? In the Quran, she is told in this beautiful passage, eat and drink. Akuli washrabi. She's told to eat and drink. And then when you see other humans, say to them, فَقُولِي إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا. I have made a vow to the All-Merciful of a fast. What is Mary fasting from? She's fasting from talking, fasting from words. It's not about what goes into her throat, it's about what comes out of her throat. If you cannot observe the fast of the throat, see what it would be to observe the fast of Maryam. Practice a kind of silence, which is not merely the absence of words, but it's actually hearing that divine speech which never stops coming from the inside. And there's one form which you might even say is the highest. And this is a practice that is associated with the chosen one, alayhi salatu wassalam. And this is called Samul Wisal. And usually people talk about this as the continuous fast, where you fast without pausing to partake of food and drink. And the Habib himself, alayhi salatu wassalam, actually prohibited others from doing this. And his friends wanted to do it. And he said to them, you shouldn't do this because I'm not like you. I spend the night with my loving, cherishing, sustaining Lord, and God gives me food and drink directly. Directly. I eat with God, I eat from God. And that's the fast of Muhammad. To take your sustenance directly from God. Ibn Arabi says at one point, I tried this. And the sustenance that I had was so heavenly that my neighbors started coming out saying, what are you eating? We've never smelled anything that smelled so good. So what is this fast? Is it a heavenly bread, perhaps? Is it celestial biryani and kebab? And maybe wisal is union. Wisal is union. The fast of Muhammad, alayhi salatu wassalam, is to strive for union with God. No more separation, no more exile, only togetherness. We have brought our nothingness to God, and God gives us everythingness. If you go through that fast, the ending of the month, Eid al-Fitr, is not a return back to eating and drinking. It's not back to business as usual. It's the remembrance that it's the Eid al-Fitr because Allah is the Fatir. Alhamdulillah, Fatir as-samawati wal-ard. Eid is about the idea of returning, and the fast of Muhammad, alayhi salatu wassalam, is about returning to Allah. So we're not actually telling you, go out there and fast 30 days without eating and drinking. We're not telling you, go ahead and jeopardize your own being. What we're saying is, come back to Allah. Come back to the one who's near without the possibility of being far. Come home to the home that you've never left. You have a home. You are not spiritually homeless, and God is your home. And if you can do that, then Maulana Rumi says, بگذشت مه روزه عید آمد و عید آمد بگذشت شب هجران معشوق پدید آمد. The month of fasting has gone, the Eid has come, the Eid has come. The long night of exile and separation has passed, and the beloved has come. The beloved has come. And of course, God is our beloved. So, friends, we are going to pause here for a minute. If this is the first time that you are joining us, I ask you to stay if you're able to. And we're going to do something that is a feature of how we live these chai, love, and prayer sessions, which is that we take a few minutes to give you the opportunity to talk in small groups with some new friends. And there's a condition on this, which is that each and every one of us can only speak from the depth of our own experience. No one in these small groups is the sheikh or the sheikha. No one is the therapist. No one is the healer. And then we'll come back together, and I'm happy to take some questions at that time, and we'll talk to you a little bit about some future gatherings that we have, including a summer retreat in Turkey. And so I'll see you. The breakout rooms should be open now. Try this. I know this is a new experience, and I know some are always a little reticent to try it, but let's give it a shot, and then we'll come back together in just about 10 minutes or so. Yeah, I think the break rooms are open, and we'll see you back on the other side, friends. And I hope you enjoyed getting an opportunity to make some new friends and perhaps meet some familiar faces again. So being mindful of the fact that we have some friends who are joining us for the first time, I wanted to just very quickly take 2 minutes and go over some of the programs and offerings that we have, and may it be that, inshallah, it is something that is of benefit to some friends. With this being, of course, the holy month of Ramadan, I know that many people are trying to find ways of drawing closer and closer to God. And for many people, one of the ways in which we strive to do so is to spend a little bit more time with the Qur'an. And yet, sometimes people can find that to be a challenging thing to figure out, how do you really get into the Quran? So one thing that we have is a course that is called The Heart of the Quran. You can find it on our website. And for the month of Ramadan, we have an offer where we will donate half of the cost of this course to a charity of your choice. And we have 3 opportunities, one for Palestine, one for Morocco, and one right here in the US. to help protect vulnerable communities from ICE. So there's information about that that I'm happy to provide later for you. And then in addition, we're going to have some programs that are coming up, inshallah, over the course of the next few months or so. And let me see. Can you all see this at this point? Yeah. So we have some journeys and retreats, which these are open to friends of all backgrounds, with the exception of the one to Mecca and Medina. So at the end of May, we have a program in Morocco, and this one will give you access to a lot of very special sites that usually just tourists cannot easily access. But we go and we meet with some of the local area Sufis and have very beautiful, meaningful experiences there. We also meet with some extraordinary artists in Morocco. We get to spend a couple of days in the desert, actually in this very specific place that you're seeing here. We have a dinner under the stars. And there's something about that experience of being in Morocco which invites you in and draws you in to a more contemplative and inner life. That's in end of April, beginning of May. And given the fact that it's a fairly intimate program, there's a lot of small group discussions that we get to share. Then in June, we have a program in Turkey, June 1st to 12th. And this one will cover Istanbul and Bursa and Cappadocia and Konya. Understandably, this one has a special focus on Maulana Rumi. And we definitely have a pilgrimage to Rumi's shrine. And the goal here is not only just to see the famous monuments. As I say, it's not the highlights, but it's the inner lights. So it's really to share with you what it is that the communities and the people who have sanctified these spaces have wanted you to come away with it. So again, going far beyond touristic kind of cliches. And then in December, inshallah, if we are called and invited by God and by God's beloved, we hope to have another Umrah program. And the way that we've been talking about Ramadan, if you wanted to undertake a pilgrimage that is perfumed by these kinds of teachings, that would be the opportunity to come, getting to share some beautiful experiences. And I see in our gathering some friends who've been on some of these different journeys. And there we end, of course, with a sacred visit to Medina. So those are just some ways of extending some of these conversations. I wanted to pause and see if there are questions that maybe have come up. I'm scrolling through your conversations, very deeply touched and grateful by the kind words of many of you about who have come on these journeys. Thank you so much, friends. I'm very deeply honored and touched. And yeah, the Heart of the Quran course is one that you can go through the month of Ramadan, spending 30 minutes each night. And you will go through the whole entire course. It focuses on those chapters of the Quran that have always been seen as the heart of the Quran, the more spiritually relevant parts of the Quran as well. And yes, I didn't put everything sort of in there, but in November, inshallah, we will have the Rumi and yoga program again in Morocco. That's a 5-day program, basically around Thanksgiving, with yoga every morning, teachings on Rumi, and zikr every night. Anyway, so we do have just a few minutes left, and I wanted to see if there's any questions that you all may have, anything that maybe came up in the session that wasn't clear. We want to end things by 3:30, but if there's just a quick reflection or question, we would love to hear from you. Katerina Jan, yes, dear. Let's see. Is there a way of unmuting yourself? No.
Uh,
There we go. You got it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, lovely.
Assalamualaikum,
Alaikum
beloved Brother
assalam.
Jan.
Lovely to see you and such an early hour of the day in Australia.
It is, it is. It is. What a blessing though. And lovely to see so many friends from travels on the call. Amit Jan, I've heard a few times now about Ibn Arabi's 3 layers of fasting, and I'm curious to have your perspective on to what extent, for those of us who are participating in, observing in, imbibing in Ramadan, and also living in the modern world. To what extent do you think, or how is a good way into reaching that fasting of the heart, given the kinds of daily encounters we're very likely to have?
Of course. Thank you. Thank you, my dear. What a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful query and invitation. So I think I did share with you that, I myself am diabetic and fasting is actually quite unwise, sort of for me, given how dangerous it is. So for me, it's been a matter of redirecting that focus on other ways of honoring and sitting with it. And it's interesting, particularly for people who are converts. Sometimes Ramadan, far from being this night of, every night there's 4 different iftars that you're invited to. Sometimes it's like, well, I'm sitting in my apartment by myself, breaking fast. God is one, and so am I, you know, and that's I think a reality that some people also experience. And being mindful of time, if you would permit me, I'll share one last um, story, which is the one that I sit with. And this one comes from Ibn Arabi. Ibn Arabi, when he talks about the fast, he's got an enormous chapter on fasting in the Futuhat al-Makkiyah, the illuminations of Mecca. And it just goes to show you how important the fast is for him. And so the story, maybe this will be an indirect way of getting to your beautiful question, dear Katrina Jan, is that he tells the story of one of the nomads, the Arab, who's coming to see the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam. And these are not what you would call refined people, right? These are rough. These are people who are very rough around the edges. And whenever they show up in the life of the Prophet, it's almost a comic moment because, the Habib himself is this elegant being, and every glance is beautiful, every touch is beautiful, every word is intentional. You hear these accounts of the companions sat around him as if there were bird nests on their head, like they're just sitting so still, and then out come these country bumpkins. Like it's Billy Bob Joe Ahmed pulling up from the desert. And so it says that, this one of these Arab nomads, the country guys, shows up in Medina and he comes and sits right to the Prophet. And this is his question. He says, so tell me what I should do because it's the month of Ramadan and I accidentally oopsied my fast by having sex with my wife in the middle of the day. And he sort of puts it in this very direct way. And he's like, so like, what should I do? And so this is all in Ibn Arabi. And the Prophet is like, well, there's some things you could do. You could You could fast for a couple of months because you intentionally broke your fast. And the Arab guy is like, no can do. Fasting is what got me into this trouble in the first place, and I'm not going to get out of this by more fasting. And the Habib is like, all right, well, then, you could go and you could free a slave and you could pay some money to free a slave. And the country guy is like, do you see any slaves around here? The only slave here is me. And I don't even got no money to go free no slave. And then the Habib is like, all right, then just hang out here for a while and we'll think of something. And there's something about that gesture of hang out here, right? Practice some patience, right? He's not just going down the checklist of advice. And as they're sitting and as they're spending time with him, there's a group that arrives and they bring a gift for the Prophet, and it's a bunch of dates. And the Habib takes the dates and says, take these dates and go feed the poor. Go feed the poor. And that will make up for you having had sex with your wife in the middle of the day. And the Arab guy says, um, between this mountain and this mountain, there is no one more poor than me. I'm the poorest guy I know. And the Habib says, all right, wonderful. Then take those dates, go home and share them with your family. And that will make up for it. And I love this story. I love this story because of the model of gentleness, of you meet people where they are. You don't impose on things more than what it is that they can handle. And Ibn Arabi goes into a lot of detail. And one of the things that is talked about is, well, what about the wife? She also had sex in the middle of the day. And Ibn Arabi's answer is, the man didn't ask, what should the wife do? And the Prophet didn't talk about, what should the wife do? He did not make religion difficult. His task, as Rumi would say, we were sent here to bring people to Allah. We were not sent here to drive people away. So, in that sense of how do we practice our religion in today's world, understanding that the task of today's world is not to bring people to Allah. Understanding that the task of today's world is to distract you, to tantalize you, and to get you to be a consumer. It's not even so much that it's wanting you to click and buy. It wants your breath. It wants your attention. It wants your energy. It wants your heart, your soul, your glance. How do we cultivate that gentle sense of being in this world in a state of grace with the awe and consciousness that the one that we seek is already near, is the Qareeb. Yeah. So, so many of you, so many of us are so mindful, heartful, attentive to what we put into our bodies. Maybe in the holy month of Ramadan, we can also pay some attention to what instruction and teaching and practices about matters of the spirit are we putting into our beings. And if someone is shouting and yelling, and if for them the most important thing that they can talk about is it Ramadan, or is it Ramazan, or is it Ramzan? Is it Ramadan Mubarak, or is it Ramadan Saeed? Eyvallah. Eyvallah. Let them. Let them. Let's use this as a time of coming nearer to the one who's already near. All right, friends, I've already exhausted your time and your patience. May this be a time that we're gentle, as Simijan says, not only with one another, but also with our own selves. And if that's challenging for you, if that's challenging, if you find yourself with these old demons of shame and doubt and guilt coming at you, visualize yourself as a 6-year-old. And if you've forgotten, put a picture of yourself as a 6-year-old and talk to yourself the way that you would talk to a 6-year-old. And do that practice for the other people that you also come across, except for tyrants. And the tyrant, you're allowed to speak truth to power, remembering that today is the Urs of Malcolm X. May God bless you all. May God illuminate you and bring you closer and closer. Thank you, friends, for being with us. Thank you for sanctifying this holy month. And love you all dearly. And I'm deeply grateful for the time that we've shared. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, iyi günler, iyi akşamlar, and see you inshallah soon. Yeah. Goodbye.